All right, folks, today we're going to take a look at how EbscoHost can help us to develop a quick path to a works cited page or annotated bibliography, depending on the type of research project you're assigned. So the first thing we need to get access to is a result list from a database search. So I'll click over here to EbscoHost, and in this fictitious assignment, I was told to research the effects of school uniforms. And so I decided to look at school uniforms and how they have academic benefits. So in this advanced search window, you can see those two search terms. But as a quick review, over on the left, we can take a look at our current search, which has the search terms, but it also tells us what limiters we used and what kind of source types we decided to search for. These are really powerful tools. So just a quick review, full text, most important limiting tool you always have to use. Full text allows you to have access to the entire article as it appeared in a newspaper, magazine, or academic journal. If you can't read the whole article, the result is meaningless to you for your project. So always click full text. I also selected a specific set of dates for my publication time. So if you notice here carefully, you'll see I started as beginning date 2001 and my end date was 2016. I wanted to keep all my research in the 21st century. I also limited by source types. This is a really powerful tool, especially if you have a teacher who, like me, will require his or her students to find certain types of sources. So I often will ask my students to find a certain number of academic journals, a certain number of magazine articles, and a certain number of newspaper articles. So you notice I clicked on those three types of sources. Well, this search led me to 14 hits that fall into those categories. So let's take a look at what we get when we open that information up. So I'm going to grab this first article. Let's do a quick walking tour of what we see here. This is your basic detailed record. And what you see in big print will be the title of the article. You know, some of these words are in bold. It's because they were part of my search engine, my search topics. Underneath the author, or rather underneath the title, is the author's name, Deborah Viadero. Source line is an important one for us because it tells us the name of the journal or the newspaper, what volume, what issue, what page numbers, and then the publication date itself. Very important for our works cited page. A lot of this we can skip down. The abstract is another important one for you to know about. An abstract is another name for a summary. It's the research term for a summary. And so this paragraph represents a summary of this 3-page article. Now, warning, do not try to write your research projects only having read the summary. It's going to be very clear you don't know what that article is about or how that article addresses the topic that you've been researching. So please don't try to avoid reading the article. Go back to that article, read it, annotate it, take notes on it, know what it's doing, so that way you can talk intelligently about it. Scroll down, we can ignore most of this, and at the bottom here is our database name. In this case, it's ERIC, an education database. Over on the left, you'll see the link to the full text, which is HTML. That's just website code, so it looks like a scrolling website. It's the full text of the article. And then what we really want to work with are the tools on the right. So for the sake of this video, we're going to pretend I've read this article, and now I'm ready to start using it in my works cited page or my annotated bibliography. So my go-to tool, and there are a lot of different options, but my go-to tool is to do the email because it provides you a lot of information that you need for your works cited. It gives you a full, either a link to the full article or the actual full text article in the email, and you have that at your disposal wherever you are. And since most of us have smartphones or iPads or tablets, we can access our email from anywhere, so we can be working on this all the time. So to do this, simply type in your email address. I've used this before, so it's remembered it. You don't need a subject or a comments line, although if you have a lot of articles, it might be helpful for you to give it a subject heading, so that way you know what this particular article is about. But over on the right side, the most important part of this email tool is the citation format. Click that button. This is what's going to do the work for you in your works cited page, at least much of it. If you click on the options on citation format, you'll see there are a number of them. For English, we use the Modern Language Association, or MLA, but you'll see there are other popular formats like the APA, or American Psychological Association, among others. Again, we're going to do MLA because that's what we require. And then click Send. And as simple as that, you go to your inbox, and there you go, a receipt from EbscoHost. And again, here's the full text that we were looking at before, and here's my works cited page info. So let's simply copy that and take it to our Word document. Now, this is my works cited page document. Before you start putting info in here, I strongly recommend you set it up for the MLA format that requires the student's name, the teacher's name, the class name, and the due date, the top left-hand corner. And then centered under that would be the name of the document, and this is works cited. Also notice this is all double spaced. So after you typed it, it would be a good idea to click that double space button there. Okay, so we're ready to go. So let's go ahead and paste our document, or paste our information. Now, let's take a look at what we've got here. It looks like all the information is here. The author's name of the article, name of the journal, volume, issue, date, all that information is present. It's physically not formatted correctly, though. That's what we now need to do. So first thing is we need to bring this all over to the left margin. Well, that's as simple as clicking backspace. Second thing, MLA requires that this information be double spaced. Again, simple. Go to your spacing tool, click 2.0, double space, and now we've got our double spaced info. Second thing we need to do, or sorry, third thing we need to do, is indent every line after the first one by 5 spaces, or simply hit the tab button once. The reason we do that is so that all of this info is pushed over, and then just the author's last name will be left hanging out there so that it's emphasized. So that way in our paper, when we're using a quote from that article and we put the parenthetical, the parentheses with the author's last name and page number after our quote, we can quickly reference it back here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to put my cursor in front of the evidence and then hit tab. It didn't move over just that line, did it? This is a common problem students run into, and it gets them frustrated all the time. But it's an easy fix. What ended up happening here was that instead of indenting just the second line, it indented everything. Why? Word processors use a tool known as text wrap, which means as you're typing your paper and you get to the end of a line on the screen, the computer will automatically wrap that text around to the next line. You'll type the next line, it'll wrap it around again to the next line, and it forms your paragraphs that way. That is an incredibly easy and efficient way to type up your paragraphs. When you had old typewriters, you had to hit enter each time to make sure your paragraphs were formatted correctly. This does the work for you. But when you're trying to tab over only one of those lines, we have a problem because the first line is digitally connected to the second line. So we need to break that. So let's undo what we just did. How do you break second line from the first line? Simple. Put your cursor at the beginning of the second line and hit the enter button. Notice we have a little extra space there. We need to fix that in a minute. But now, since we've broken these two lines apart, we can now tab just those subsequent lines. So we've tabbed over. Let's get rid of this space. For whatever reason, a lot of word processors like to add an extra space after you hit enter. So to get rid of that extra space, go to your spacing window, open that up, and tell it not to add. Don't add a space between paragraphs. And now we've got a clean set of double space lines. Last thing we need to do, this looks good, but let's make sure that all the titles and the names are where they're supposed to be. Oftentimes I find that some sources have problems with capitalization, or maybe the name isn't in the right order. So we need to double check that. So I've seen sources where they've typed it up Deborah Viadero. Okay, that might be the way we say her name, but in a works cited page, we always need last, comma, first. Clearly Deborah is the first name, so we have to go comma first. This is fine though. Titles, And oftentimes we'll see them either all caps or all lowercase. Well, we know that that's not the proper way to format a title. We need to capitalize all of the words except for what we call the unimportant words, conjunctions and prepositions. This title looks good. So we're done with this source. Let's go back and get another one. So let's go back to our result window, go back to our result list, and let's just grab another source. Let's get a newspaper source. Here we go. Kids read benefits. Again, I've read this article. We're going to pretend that. Email. Type in your email. Go over to citation format. Select the format you're using. We're using MLA. Email it. Go to your inbox. There it is. Copy it. Now, I happen to know that that article had the last name of Durando, and so it's going to be before Viadero. So I'm going to go ahead and just put it in the right spot. And now we're going to do the same thing over again. We need to bring our information over to the left margin. We need to double space it, so highlight 2.0, double space. We need to break our text wrap. So go to that second line, hit enter. And now we can start tabbing things over. Okay, let's pause a second. Let's undo that tab. You notice, let me undo the previous step. Notice this gap here. We can't have that. We need to fill that gap in. What's happened is another text wrap issue. The computer sees this web address as one big word, and so it won't break it in any natural spot. So we need to break it so that way part of that text comes up here to fill this gap. There's no golden, rule for how to do it, no silver bullet. It's all guesswork. But before I mess with this hyperlink, I need to deactivate it. So go ahead and highlight that. Do a right click, go to the highlight link, and then simply remove the hyperlink. I don't want this going off to a website on me. So let's see where we can break it. Let's see. I'm just going to put a space right after the login. See if that does it. No, it wasn't enough. Let's back it up a little bit. Let's go to the .com and space it. Nope, that didn't do it. Let's go in front of the com. Perfect. So now you see I've filled up that space. Now let's go ahead and break that and then tab and tab. And now we need to get rid of that extra space. Go up to our spacing option, click the box, don't add extra spaces. And then let's get rid of this extra space between our sources. We just got to do some cleanup work. Okay, now just like we proofread this particular source, let's proofread the one above. We know we have to have our author's name last, comma first. All right, common sense tells us that Jessica's a first name, so we need to flip these two. Okay, so let's go ahead and take Jessica, move her after the last name. Oops, undo that. Let's just cut that. How about that? We will cut, pull the last name all the way over, comma, and then we will paste to Jessica. Okay, last name, comma first. So we just got to check that. Let's check the title of our article. Yep, is not capitalized exactly the way it should be. Everything else looks good. So you see how quickly we were able to start to put together this works cited page without having to really sweat the MLA format. Just know the basic rules for capitalization and how names are supposed to be formatted. And EbscoHost really does most of the work for you. If this were an annotated bibliography instead of a works cited page, you would simply change the title to annotated bibliography, and then underneath your sources, add your headings for your quotes and your summaries and so forth. So again, a great tool to help speed up the research process. That way you can focus on actually reading these articles, understanding them, and writing quality research-based arguments instead of having to waste all of your time fidgeting with specific formatting rules. So I hope you take advantage of these tools for the next research project that you complete.